back to another YouTube Live here with myself and Coach Laura. Hi, Laura. How are you doing?
I'm well, Lisa. Good to see you in the midst of summer here.
Exactly. We were just saying how warm it's over in Canada at the moment, and we've actually had a very warm day today. Also, I think right now it's like 28 degrees.
Ooh,
So yes, very
nice.
warm. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, another spicy topic to that we have planned today, which is constipation. Help, I'm constipated. What should I do? I mean, we hear this from our clients initially quite a lot or every now and then. I've certainly experienced it. I would assume you have too. So, yeah, a topic I think everybody can relate to.
Yes. Yeah. No, this is a good one to dive into. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of it.
For sure. And yeah, we want to talk about specific strategies for how to deal with it in the moment so that you feel comfortable again. But also, we want to talk about how to prevent it long term. And yeah, I think why are we even talking about constipation, or why is this even worth making a whole life about? And I think, well, number one, we already said most people have experienced it at some point. But secondly, aside from it just being uncomfortable, it's also unhealthy being constipated on a regular basis, simply for the reason that obviously you're piling up more and more things in your gut, in your colon, that your body wants to clean out. So there's all this toxins, all these hormones which need to come out, and they're sort of stuck there, continuing to circulate or whatever. So of course we want to get them out. That's kind of the main reason, aside from it just being uncomfortable, you feeling bloated, perhaps being gassy, etc.
Yeah, yeah, a really good explanation. And also, I want to say, like, what is constipation? And we have this conceived notion that if you don't go have a bowel movement for 2, 3 days, then obviously that's the obvious of constipation. However, I've learned that you can be constipated while still having bowel movements every day. It's just not complete emptying, and it's also
Mm.
the consistency of your bowels. So it's not just what we think is obvious. There are a lot of different ways to and different kind of variations of this constipation.
Very good point. Thank you so much for pointing that out, because yeah, I think the clinical diagnosis for constipation doesn't occur unless you've been constipated for like 4 days plus. But yeah, even like if you don't go to the bathroom regularly, we do say we want to see a bowel movement every day ideally. But as you said, even amongst that, we want to see, is it quote unquote healthy, in the sense of being a complete bowel movement, in the sense of what sort of stool consistency do you have? Like, is it floating stools or whatever? And I mean, we spoke about the Bristol stool chart before. I don't know if it was on here or in the Rise, but I'll put it in the show notes as well, or in the link in the description here, so that people can look up, like, okay, is my stool considered normal, or am I more on the constipated side, or actually more on the diarrhea side, on the too frequent side, because of course we also don't want to be going to the bathroom 4 or 5 times a day. So yes, what can we do when we are constipated right this minute and we're like, ah, this is so uncomfortable? The first thing I will always point towards is hydration. Many people don't consume as much water or just fluids as they should, or even as they think that they are. So that would be point number one. Most people go straight towards to fiber, but I would just say sometimes if you're already constipated, that can actually make things worse, because we don't know, are you constipated because of too much fiber, not enough fiber? I would just say focus on hydration first.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. That's always my first line of attack as well.
Yeah, and of course, hydration should go hand in hand with electrolytes. So just making sure we're on the right side there, not over consuming them, but also not under consuming them. I mean, most people, depending on where they are probably good on the side of sodium, or possibly even too much sodium. But if you are somewhere where it's super hot and you've been sweating more than usual, you've been drinking more water than usual, you might not have been able to keep up with your sodium. So yes, do consider that. But more than anything, other electrolytes like magnesium, like potassium, they can contribute, or can play a big role there as well.
Yeah, I like it's so electrolytes, and I like to think it as like your body is firing. And if you don't have those electrolytes, if your colon can't fire, then it's not going to empty. So if that's one way to kind of remember, things are sluggish, right? Like I want to be able to move my bowels. So how can I, you know, get that electric charge down so that I can get those out?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I like that's a good visual to paint, and I think on the sense of a specific electrolyte, or where, like we were saying, magnesium, that can actually be a helpful thing to supplement magnesium citrate. You can even up the dose for a little while, whilst you are constipated. Sometimes a high dose of magnesium citrate can really get things going. It's not a form of magnesium that we want to be taking consistently, just because you're gut does get used to it, and then you kind of get a lazy gut in and of itself. So it's not the type of magnesium I would recommend always supplementing with. But in the case of constipation, or just generally having maybe through travel or whatever, this can be a good form or a good way to help your body fire, so to speak.
Yep, that's another good plan of attack. And then, like you mentioned, it's kind of more short term, but also magnesium deficiency can exacerbate the constipation. So once you kind of get past the hump, then you want to supplement with a different type of magnesium. And my first line of defense would be magnesium biglycinate, and then go from there. Like I mean, there are many types of magnesium, but let's just keep it simple and get things moving.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess to the point we should or could possibly touch on, what or why do we even get constipated? And there can be so
Mhm.
many reasons for that. I mentioned one in the sense of sitting too much, and like when we're traveling, oftentimes it's a combination of the air pressure and just being seated, being in that hunched over position for too long, where we're like sort of mm, yeah, clipping off almost the column, so
Yeah.
things can't come out. So movement is another great antidote to that, but of course, it's not always possible if we are forced to sit for long periods of time. But other reasons for constipation can be things like not enough fiber or too much fiber. We will get into that more in a minute as well. And but one that is very very much overlooked is stress. Like such a big point where if we're just constantly on the go, 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 we can like our body is just not in a state of like wanting to focus on digestion for one, but also we are generally getting more tight in our midsection, and just that overall pressure in our belly area is preventing the colon from like properly cleansing itself out. So to shift over to like what can we do against that is of course strategies like stress management techniques, in the sense of yoga or other relaxation things where you switch into parasympathetic state, but also just things like a hot or warm bath where your body literally relaxes more, like the muscles around your column. Have you had any experiences in the sense of stress, not stress, etc., yourself or even with clients?
Yes, definitely stress, and you can also kind of pinpoint the more time of day or even time of month. But
Mm,
I also want to point out this happens with kids too, especially when they're running around, go go go, and then young ones you recognize, oh, they haven't really had a bowel movement, so maybe giving them a bath, giving them a nice little tummy rub. You want to
mm.
kind of go up and down. You don't need to go across, up, down, up, over and down. That helps to get the colon moving. So and I like it, this is a layered on top of stress. It's getting into that calm state. And even if that means a belly massage, a warm bath, whatever it is to kind of, bring things down and able to move.
Absolutely. Yeah, great tips, especially with kids for sure. And I've seen it with some clients, like they normally in their day-to-day life tend to be more constipated, but then let's say they go on vacation and they come back and they're like, even though I ate weird things and I probably ate less fiber than usual, I have never had bowel movements this regular. And I'm like, well, it's probably mostly linked to stress in this scenario. But yes, I guess in the point of too much fiber, and especially with like people like you and I, we see that more than the not enough fiber. So if we have people that are rather health conscious, they love veggies just because, or oats and all these things. Um, I hate to say it, but sometimes we're like actually giving our body too much to break down. I mean, fiber is essentially the parts of the carbohydrate that cannot be broken down. And so if we have that more or less blocking up our pipes, our digestive system, um, it, it's not ideal. And we can do one or two things. Just of course, overall reducing the fiber a little bit and introducing more simple carbs, or just looking at what type of fibers do we have, because sometimes we have an imbalance between soluble and insoluble fiber, and also looking into the cooking methods, because if we eat a lot of raw vegetables, they're a lot harder to digest than if they're cooked. Do you have any opinion on that?
Yeah, definitely on so well, I'm gonna back up a bit. With the fiber, when you have more fiber, you actually need to consume more water in order for the motility, and, that just layers onto the hydration. And then also with the cooked veggies, I have quite a few clients where, let's reduce the amount of salad you're eating, and let's include more lightly sautéed. You want to overcook them, but lightly sauté them, and it really does make a big difference. It's like I didn't
Mm.
realize that all these, you know, we're supposed to eat raw veggies, which is great, but that doesn't always facilitate what we need to get things moving.
Yeah, and even down to the time of the day does play a role, because our gut is a bit slower in handling certain things in the beginning of the day. That's why often things like smoothies or even soups are like recommended in Ayurvedic nutrition, in the beginning of the day or for your first meal, and also at the end of the day. It We don't want to give our gut something that as hard to digest as it needs to be. And so if we do want to have some raw vegetables, more centering them like in the middle of the day or as like an afternoon snack, that's, usually most people can tolerate that much better. Then let's just say if you have like 200-300 grams of raw broccoli in the evening with some kind of dip as a snack, I would not recommend that at all. I actually, funny little side story. I don't know if it's funny for other people, but I went to a wedding and I was in the bridal party, and leading up to the actual ceremony in our room, they had like a plate of raw vegetables, and most of it was broccoli, and some of the bridesmaids went like crazy over all of that and just went in, and their bellies got so distorted they could hardly close their dresses when
Oh,
it came to the actual time of the ceremony, not to speak of their like actual bloated feeling and the gassiness. So anyone listening who's
yeah.
thinking about getting married anytime soon, do not put raw vegetables on your bridal party's platter.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so uncomfortable. Just once you do
Mhm.
it once, you won't do it again.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, if you're unsure, like what's an insoluble and what's a soluble fiber source, because one of them actually draws water into the stool to make it sort of softer, and the other one, or to thicken things up, and the other one makes it more of like a gel-like paste. And so, if you have too much of the thickening one and not enough of the sort of gliding agent, you're getting it out of the balance. And so look into, do I need more potatoes and maybe less oats, or do I would I benefit from having more things like apples, which also contain pectins and other micronutrients that can help move things along a little bit quicker. That's just something worth looking into, especially if you have a we almost all have a preference for one thing or another. Like I used to have have oats in the morning and oats for my afternoon snack as well. And as soon as I cut out the oats in the afternoon snack, things improved a lot. So even something as healthy as that, or again, when you notice you're constipated, a lot of people go like, "Oh, I need to add more fiber. I'm going to have 17,000 prunes or whatever." Not necessarily the best way to go about, or adding tons of beans or legumes that you're not used to. Also, big caution. But yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, on top of that, I was gonna say kiwis. Like if you have two
Mm.
kiwis, those are really, really good for constipation. They help draw in some of the water. So that is something that I have been recommending to my clients is okay, so let's start eating two kiwis in the morning with your breakfast and see if that helps.
Of course, that's a really great point. And I guess you might be on the other end of the spectrum if you're listening and you're like, oh, most of my food is actually more processed. I might have, a bagel or whatever in the morning. I might have a wrap for lunch, and I might have some white rice with something else for dinner. Then you're probably more on the side of not enough fiber. So we definitely don't want to exclude that. Just saying that most of the clients, or many of the clients that we work with that are more on the regular constipation side, not so much like a one off, they tend to be more on the almost too much, and too much fiber, or the wrong kinds of fiber, or overly stressed sort of people. So I guess we kind of mix things together here between the acute constipation cure and the long-term constipation cure. So I kind of want to be going back to the more acute things. And something that I often recommend, even though I will say there is not a ton of scientific evidence backing this up, but I do recommend, like in the morning, starting your day off with either a warm glass of water of with apple cider vinegar or a lemon or both in it. The I have found that the acidity in it just kind of helps kickstart the gut in general. And if nothing else, is to the apple cider vinegar or the lemon, the warm water in and of itself does have some kind of like a soothing effect for your gut. And most people don't drink enough in the morning anyway. So that's just more of like a bro science, or not even bro science, but more of a, like an anecdotal type grandma science maybe thing, that I sometimes recommend.
I like that. We're gonna have more grandma science. I like that. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. No, that's great. And I'm sure you're kind of throw in hormones can really wreak havoc on our bowel movements too.
Yeah, that's such a good point, especially for many women in the week before the period, as progesterone drops. Many women regularly, almost every month, experience a little bit of pre-period constipation. If that happens, just learn to link it up with, oh, it's about to be that time of the month again. That's probably why maybe I should increase my hydration. Maybe I should go for my post meal walks, that type of thing, just to help out as best as I can, but also know that it's somewhat natural to be a little bit slower during that time.
Yeah, I really like that you said I've been wanting to say like the walking postprandial post meal. I know we've said this a few times. It's good for blood sugar regulation, and actually having the blood sugar imbalances and insulin resistance can also exacerbate the constipation. So any type of movement, even if it's 10 minutes, just throw a vacuum around for 10 minutes, go for a walk for 10 minutes. That can really help your motility as well. I mean, not just acute, but also long term.
Very good point. Yeah, and so many other benefits. Like you said, we've spoken about them before. So yes, highly recommended. On top of all the things we said, like when it comes to more acute things, where we don't want to grab any laxatives or so per se, if you have L-carnitine at home, this is actually a supplement which used to be more known for, or like in the bodybuilding space, it's supposed to help with blood flow, etc. Or some people take it, and some men take it to improve fertility as well. There might be some potential positive effects. But L-carnitine in a high dose, like 2-3 grams, you're going to be running to the bathroom. Like more often than not, I have heard really that this is a very potent non like laxative, non actual laxative though. So I would prefer someone takes 2 to 3 grams of L-carnitine over them going to the drugstore and picking up an actual laxative or prescription laxative or so. So just something to try in case you're, like, severely constipated.
That's a good one. It's good to have on hand. I didn't
Yeah.
know about that one actually. I knew that L-glutamine was helpful for the digestive the gut lining, but
Yes,
L-carnitine on higher doses. I guess that's the key point
exactly.
is the high dose. Yeah,
Yeah, and ideally, if you can, because sometimes it's in capsule form, but ideally in powder
yeah,
form, it's even more helpful. But yeah, it definitely is. I mean, if you're not that constipated, I'd start with like a gram and see if it helps, because not otherwise you might go again more into the diarrhea side, which of course we don't want either.
yeah. And on the nutrition side, I don't know if you have this covered, but also making sure that you have enough dietary fats
Mm,
in your diet. Because I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of if you think of olive oil, it's an oil and it can help lubricate your colon.
yes.
It's you need bile production, so that having enough dietary fats in your food in your meals is really helpful for the constipation too.
Such a good point. Yeah, absolutely. I think many people, especially if we're in a dieting phase or so, or even just many, women that were more kind of coming up with the whole in the 90s or so, really keeping fats like way too low. We have given some general or vague guidelines in terms of fats before or where your minimum fat intake should be. And we usually say, or I usually say, like if you take your goal body weight and in pounds and you use like 30% of that roughly. So let's just say you're 120 pounds, 30 or yeah, like a quarter of that, let's say that's probably easier. No, 30% of that would be about 40 grams as kind of your minimum. Or your total daily calories, you can also use a percentage of that, but I normally prefer to go by body weight just because it's independent of what phase within your periodization you're in.
Yeah, and again, like we've experienced, this is very independent per person. Some people really tolerate fats quite well. Some people don't. So there kind of is that sweet spot once you get to know your body a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. But nonetheless, as you said, we
Yeah,
should always kind of stay above a certain minimum,
yeah.
and then playing with how to distribute that over the course of the day as well. But yeah, like you say, if we're just having just carbs and protein, it can sometimes be hard. And on the point of protein, every now and then, when a client wants to increase their protein intake or needs to increase their protein intake, I often also see a bit of bloating or just digestive issues and maybe sometimes even constipation. And number one, know that that is somewhat normal and your body will get used to that higher protein intake. But number two, also number two, um, also know that know that it's going to be helpful to slowly increase your intake. So if you're going from 60 grams to 150, don't just jump from one day to another. Same thing with fiber. We've said this before. Don't just go from 5 grams per day to 30 grams per day. You are going to get constipated because of that, and it's going to be very unpleasant.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing I would like to layer on top of that is medications
Mm,
and not fasting long enough for prolonged period of times. Like sometimes, well, maybe you have a late dinner and then you're up early and you only like fast for 8 hours. But if you don't include enough of that fasting, and I'm talking 10, 12 hours, not 18 hours. We want to be consistent with enough so that your digestive system has enough time to just repair, like just calm down, and then it's a little bit more prepared to battle the food that you're about to feed it.
absolutely. That's such a good point. I like the fasting aspect for so many reasons. It is very
Yeah.
helpful for gut health, and unfortunately, a lot of people think it's not fasting at all, or it is intermittent fasting and going for at least 16 hours. But there is something in between that's beneficial for really everybody. So I think the main points that we said in terms of like acute things were really hydration, and then also looking at your electrolytes, specifically also magnesium, thinking about supplementing more in that area. Potentially, you can use a higher dose of L-carnitine to get things going. Also, other grandma science like the apple cider vinegar or lemon water. And then we talked about fiber, more specifically looking into, am I probably more getting almost too much, or have I like suddenly increased my fiber, or am I generally not getting enough? And then once we're looking into that, dissecting, do we get the right balance between insoluble and soluble, and playing with that as well, on top of making sure that you're consuming enough dietary fats as well. And movement, we mentioned postprandial walks, but just in general, more movement. And I would even put posture in with that as well. And I actually, in the notes that I took prior to this, I actually even wrote down posture when going to the bathroom as well. Because, and some people might have seen an ad, I don't even know what that was called, like a potty pot or whatever, but where it's supposed to like bring your feet up so that you're in a more natural
It's
position.
a squatty potty.
Squatty potty, there you go. I forgot the name. But you know what I meant, so there we are.
Yeah.
And but yeah, essentially, I mean, many of the toilets these days are not actually designed well so that we can cleanse out our colon properly. So the squatty potty, I think what it does is it just lifts your heels up, right? So that you're in more of like a rounded position.
Well, just
Like
like our ancestors were, like, that we didn't have
exactly,
toilets
like when
way
you
back in the day, they had to squat, and with that said, I like to say, like, bathroom hygiene, it's giving yourself enough time. If you're
yes.
only giving yourself 3 minutes every day or I mean, but whatever, it's very, very this is very, very personal and how your body functions, but I've had clients where, are you allowing yourself enough time in the morning? Because 'Cause you're rushed, 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 and you don't actually have time to fully empty your colon, and then it starts to pile up, literally.
Such a good point. Yes, absolutely. And I mean to the point of like ideally we'd like your bowel movement to be more not like clockwork, but that it's almost the same time every day. If that's not the case, don't stress about it overly, but that should be something to like almost work towards. And even if it's just like I don't feel like need to go super urgently, but I want to train my body to go in the morning no matter what. If you sit on the toilet and nothing happens for 5 minutes, maybe eventually it will click. Like I will again share another a little bit funny anecdote. I guess my ex-husband, he was a in landscaping, and so was outside all day long. Like between let's just say 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. he did not have the possibility to go for a number two. So he had to train himself to go in the morning no matter what. And it worked. Like you can get
Yeah.
accustomed to that. Your body does learn. We're essentially, animals. We do learn when we can go and when we cannot. So a dog also knows, hey, I'm being let out. I'm gonna get walked in the morning and in the evening, and I learn to hold in between. So we can do the same to kind of like train our body for that.
It's a good note for kids too,
Yeah,
right? Like, if they're at
very
school and they have anxiety about going to the bathroom at
true.
school, it's like,
True.
"Okay, so let's train you to be there, like, in the morning or when you get home," and it's even just knowing that that's a possibility because it can be really uncomfortable for them too.
For sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
hope we in my little recap I mentioned most things. The most or one of the most important ones I do want to still add is the stress management point
Yeah.
and the just relaxation point. Again, if it is things like doing a little bit of massage or even a warm sort of we have what we have over here is like a cherry cord pillow or so, like whatever you call them, like a warm kind of pillow that you can put in the microwave, and then you
Yeah.
lay it on your stomach, and it can help. It can honestly help loosen things up, and then after half an hour or so, you might be able to go. So just more on the acute side, I guess.
Yeah, hot water bottle, and also I will throw in castor oil pack. There's a
Mm,
lot more into that, but that is one
true,
also that has been really helpful from what I hear. So, there are some of these more holistic remedies that I would definitely choose before going to please don't get the Miralax.
exactly, absolutely. Well, Laura, this has been fun. Thank you so much for all your input. I enjoyed our chat today, and I look forward to another round next week.
Me too. We'll throw in some of the grandma science in there too.
Yeah, we'll do that for sure. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for
Thanks. Take
watching,
care.
everybody. Bye.
See ya.